Blog Talk Radio.
This is Gordon Ricusa, author of Shidoshi, The Four Ways of the Corpse, and The Five Principles of Everything. Getting my facts straight from Justin Ray Harvey.
This is Stan Bush. I sing Fight to Survive in the movie Bloodsport. You're listening to Justin Ray Harvey. A fight to survive!
Hi, this is Tony Luke Jr., a.k.a. Joey the Nail Nardone, and you're listening to Justin Ray Harvey.
Hey everyone, it's Rick Reiser from Today's Hit Music 103 CIR in Beckley, West Virginia. You're listening to my boy Justin Ray Harvey on J Ray Radio.
Hi, this is the Cuban Assassin, and you're watching the Justin Ray Harvey Show. Now shut your stinky mouths!
To reach Justin Harvey's studio line, please call 818-532-9762.
Yes, that is right, and we are live on J Ray Radio. I am your host, Justin Ray Harvey. So sit down, get your coffee. This is an early show. Today's guest, I've got wrestling superstar, Cuban assassin. So let's bring him on the line right now. Hello, this is Cuban assassin. Hey there.
Hello. How you
Good
doing?
Morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
How are you doing? Doing real
I'm doing
good.
all right. I'm sorry.
Good. Yeah, I'm doing wonderful. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be part of it.
So let's start by asking you, how did you get, interested in wrestling and into wrestling, for starters?
Well, I'm actually a second-generation wrestler. My father is the original Cuban assassin. He started his career in the 1960s. For people who may not don't want to get confused with the other Cuban assassin in Florida, which is Fidel Sierra, my dad started his career in the 60s and mostly known for wrestling for Stu Hart's Calgary Stampede Wrestling. And then Fidel Sierra, David Canals is his real name, came up to Stampede Wrestling, met my dad, and liked the name, and then asked my dad if he can use that name. My dad said, yeah, you can be the Cuban assassin in the United States, and I'll be the Cuban assassin in Canada. And then what happened is a year later, in 1989, I would become into wrestling by going to Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling, which, by the way, Grand Prix Wrestling is on tour right now in the Maritimes in Canada, which is promoter Emile Dupree and his son, Rene Dupree, who's mainly known for WWE being a Law Resistance and the youngest tag team champion in WWE history. He's on tour right now in the Maritimes. You can check out at renedupree.net on tour dates for Grand Prix Wrestling. They got the Great Muta that's going to be part of the show. They got the Masked Marvel, the mysterious Masked Marvel, who's a veteran of the ring. So people should really go check out the show. Plus, also, they got the youngest WWE Tag Team Champion in history, Rene Dupree himself, as part of the show, and Aaron Angel, England sensation female wrestler. She's there, and they got midgets. So they should check it out. Just go for tour dates at renedupree.net for that. And anybody wants to check information on my dad, you can always Google Cuban Assassin. You get both my dad's, myself, and Fidel Sierra's pictures, and a couple other people, phony baloney, people try to get by using the name. But the original Cuban Assassin is my father, Angel Acevedo. Then there's me, and then there's Fidel Sierra.
Wow. Yeah, I just love your character in the ring. I mean, you pull it off so well, you know.
Well, I kind of modified it a little bit different. I mean, I still emulate things that my dad had created for the character, the Cuban Assassin. The whole pretense, for everybody that wants to understand, is that my dad created the Cuban Assassin during the 1960s when John F. Kennedy was the President of the United States. And while he was in administration, there was an event that was going on in Cuba with Fidel Castro, wouldn't allow the Russian Parliament to premiere to put their nuclear warheads into Cuba. Well, this is what caused a lot of tension between the United States and Cuba, is the Cuban Missile Crisis is what's called in history, which everybody can Google that up for those who don't know, but it is history. It's the reason why the Embargo Act is upon Cuba from the United States is from the 1960s. So my dad looked, he had an appearance that looked just like Fidel Castro, and since Fidel Castro was in the news at the time, my dad took it upon himself to create the character, the Cuban Assassin, which is supposed to be one of the Fidel Castro's personal bodyguards, then turned to a Cuban agent, and my dad created the character, the Cuban Assassin, and the whole pretense is that he's an assassin that's into the professional wrestling ranks to take out the competition, to put Cuba on the map, to as if he was fighting for Fidel Castro, but in the ring, instead of in the jungles of Cuba or anywhere else. But that's primarily the character pretense that my dad created. But when I got into wrestling, Cuba was long gone out of the news. I went into wrestling, and of course, you had just a few years after I got in, Bill Clinton came into office, but Ronald Reagan was as president then. So Cuba wasn't the thing that was in the news. After the Cuban Missile Crisis, there was the terrorist, the hostage situation in Iran, which is where the Iron Sheik came into play. And, of course, the other Sheik, the original Sheik, Mr. Farhat, which is Sabu's uncle, came into play, used that and really made their character stand out really well. And but I couldn't go with the pretense of Fidel Castro. So I look like my dad, a splitting image. We look identically the same almost. So people automatically pass me on as him sometimes. But what I'd done was I changed it up. I had to be, and of course wrestling had already evolved. I mean, wrestling from the 60s changed in the 70s, it changed in the 80s, and I started in 1989 when the territories were being bought out by Vince McMahon Jr. and the World Wrestling Federation, and at the same time, the other territories were being bought out by, Jim Crockett Promotions of Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. And of course, later on, Ted Turner would get the buyout in 1988. Ted Turner had bought out Jim Crockett Promotions, Mid-Atlantic Wrestling. So it was WCW, Ted Turner, and Vince McMahon of the WWF, then the World Wrestling Federation. And then they were going head-to-head. And, of course, Vern Gagne was still into play with the AWA, the American Wrestling Association. So he didn't have all the territories. There's only certain territories that were still going on. And Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling was one of them, which still, Emile Dupree has never sold Grand Prix Wrestling territory to Vince McMahon. Even though his son, Rene Dupree, went to wrestle for the WWE, but he never sold the territory. So that's why Emile Dupree and Rene Dupree are both doing the territory again up in the Maritimes in Canada. And the Maritimes, that covers PEI, Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, parts of Quebec, Newfoundland, covers Nova Scotia. So it covers a large area up in the eastern side of the coast of the United States, while the premier promotion over on the west side of Canada, which was Stu Hart's Calgary Stampede Wrestling. But Vince bought out territories and picked the key players, from those territories to make them to what he calls now the WWE superstars. But when it came to me, when I got into 1989, and when I started wrestling, they put me under the hood mask and called me the Super Bee, because there were a couple of wrestlers they had there called the Super Bees. So I was actually called the Super Bee when I first started wrestling in 1989, and that's because I was green, young, and then they had what's called enhanced talent, or job guys, if you want to call them that, which were the guys that always got beat up in the ring by the names or any other wrestler to put them over and make them look good. And for me, that's what I was doing. I was the enhancement talent, or the job guy that put the guys over, in Grand Prix Wrestling when I started as the Super Bee. But I had to change the character. When I came out into my own after Grand Prix Wrestling, I created my dad and another guy named Jerry Morrow were doing a tag team combination called the Cuban Commandos. And I took that name, Cuban Commando, and I went under and used that name, Cuban Commando, first. And because I wanted to be different. My dad had a long hair and a long beard. I wanted to be the short, buzz-type, military-looking kind of guy with only a slight mustache. So I didn't want to try to emulate too much of the Cuban character, but I wanted to put the Cuban character into play. But I couldn't use the whole Fidel Castro routine, so I had to do something different. So what I did is I kind of stole a couple ideas from a couple wrestlers that were very popular in the wrestling business that made their names very well, which was Gorgeous George and Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
Because Gorgeous George and Hulk Hogan both were smart enough to know, and a lot of people don't know this, but, Gorgeous George, when he started off, his wrestler is known as George Wagner, and he was a low card and never really got past the mid card, and he was a very good wrestler, but he wasn't a draw for people until he peroxide bleached his hair blonde and then wore these women robes and these elaborate robes and tried to act in what we call today a gay type of character, but then they called it the pressy, or feminine type of man, and that's right, a little more feminine. He's still being a man's man, but being more feministic about it, and that changed. That made him a box office draw, and it's also made. And he played off a character, then more than he did. I mean, he wrestled, but he played off more of the character to the fans, which caused riots when he threw out his golden bobby pins, but he called them Georgie pins, and. If he was here today, he would say, "Those are not bobby pins; those are Georgie pins." And then, but that's what he would say. I mean, he would honestly say that, even out in the public, he would even portray his character as the character out in public. Hulk Hogan, and when he did Rocky III with Sylvester Stallone, it made him a household image and a name. Everybody knew who he was, but what really made him stand out was he also played to the fans, but as a superhero. And Hulk Hogan, and this is the thing that's unique about Hulk Hogan, he's such a huge guy. You're talking about a guy that stands 6'6", 6'7", weighing over 300 some pounds, more or less of a giant of a man. But yet, a little man will be beating him up, and he'd be on the ground, and the little guy just pounding on him. He's beating up. He's selling for the little guy. These fans can see this big, tremendous comeback, which they call him hulking up. Like now he's turned into the Incredible Hulk. And that was the whole pretense was him playing the superhero. That's what it was, him playing the superhero. And he played to the fans, though. I mean, he would look at the fans. He would make sure to make them feel part of the match. Well, the same thing Gorgeous George did, the same thing, And what I did was I just wanted to turn it up a little bit as when I played to the fans and make them really feel like they're in part of the match. And that's when I come up with, he pulled my stinking hair. I'll sit there and say, he pulled my stinking hair, ref. He pulled my stinking hair. And then all of a sudden I look at the fans and say, ask them. He pulled my stinking hair. The next thing you know, they're saying no. So I'm going to play off of this. and I use this to be part of the match, but I incorporate it right part of the match. So I make the fans feel as if they are controlling the match. And then they say no, and then I'll say yes, and then they'll say no, and I'm just keep playing with the fans, and I say yes, and they keep saying no, and then eventually I come up with this thing that's like, shut your stinking mouth. And that right there, shut your stinking mouth, at the time when I was wrestling involved, you start getting these catchphrases and these little lines that people know the wrestlers are from, you know, and I just happen to say it a lot all the time, you know, to the referee, to the other guy in the ring I'm in the ring with, to the fans, and that became my whole catch slogan. It was "Shut your stinking mouth," and I would say "Shut your stinking mouth," and all of a sudden to the fans, after I'm playing back and forth in this yes/no, or regardless if it's yes/no, maybe it's a pinfall. I tell the ref, it was 3, uno, dos, tres, 3, and then all of a sudden the fans will say 2. And I'll respond back to the fans to incorporate them in part of the match. I'll say 2. I say 3, they say 2, and I say 3, they say 2, and then I'll come back again, shut your stinking mouth, to follow it up at the punchline at the end, like a joke. And and then I make the fans. I want to have the fans feel like that they're a part of the match, that they're having some part of controlling the outcome of the match, because they do. And the one thing that we are there, and regardless, I know a lot of my colleagues and friends, and even my father don't like where I changed up things, but the thing is, you got to change with the times. And wrestling,
that's very true.
Wrestling, and this comes from Vince McMahon Jr. himself. This business is and has always been about entertainment since the 1920s of the Ed Strangle Lewis days. So, it has been entertainment. The whole wrestling card setup is more or less from like a vaudeville show where you have these different acts you put into it. P.T. Barnum, when he had wrestling part of his side shows, what you call act shows or athletic shows, he introduced the colorful, fictitious biographies of wrestlers, had them wear costumes. That's why when you went to a P.T. Barnum show, you seen a Russian wrestle on the show, but yet he sounded like he was from Iowa. That's how that come into play. Years later, when Gorgeous George would become Gorgeous George, and then Classy Freddie Blassie would come out, then Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, it started a whole chain. And it even emulated towards Superstar Billy Graham's character, which would emulate to Jesse the Body Ventura and Hulk Hogan. Of course, you got Nature Boy Ric Flair that came out of that, which everybody encouraged everybody. And you got to understand, people understand that. Gorgeous George came out. He encouraged Classy Freddie Blassie. He encouraged Nature Boy Buddy Rogers. Well, they, encouraged Nature Boy Ric Flair. Nature Boy Ric Flair was the one that encouraged the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels. Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels encouraged Y2J Chris Jericho. As you can see, the volume just keeps turning up for each time they turn. Same with Superstar Billy Graham. He took a page out of Gorgeous George's book and did a rap like Muhammad Ali, which a lot of people don't know, but Muhammad Ali fashioned his own self, Muhammad Ali, after Gorgeous George. So Muhammad Ali wouldn't have been Muhammad Ali if he didn't emulate himself after Gorgeous George. No one ever said they were the best number one until Gorgeous George came out. But, that's when that comes into play. When you start having arrogant people saying arrogant things and then proving themselves right, that gets a lot of people's attention. Either you're going to make people mad, or you're going to encourage the young people to emulate themselves after that. But that's what I did. I copied from Gorgeous George, took a page from our Gorgeous George's book, our Hulk Hogan's book. I added those things into play with my dad's character. So, and that's what I want people to really see, is that I play and cater towards the fans, and I feed off the fans, and I have them to be part of the match, to make them part of the match. For anybody who's never seen me perform, all they have to do is go to my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/CubanMano2, which is Cuban Mano is one word and the actual number 2 all together. That's youtube.com/CubanMano2. There's a lot of my matches on there, a lot of my dad's matches, a lot of Atlantic Grand Prix wrestling matches on there, a lot of different materials, is on that channel, as well as the Cuban Assassin story, which is a short documentary about what I'm telling you right now. So anybody wants to do that and subscribe, they can feel free. Check that out. That's how I got in wrestling. I was always a wrestling fan growing up. I've always wanted to be my dad's tag team partner, which that was my dream, and I accomplished that dream. I did become my dad's tag team partner in 1999 and in 2000 as well. Yes. And I also wrestled my own dad. I've wrestled people I grew up watching on TV, which when I grew up and where I'm from, I live in a town called Oak Hill, West Virginia. I was born in Patterson, New Jersey. I was born in Patterson, New Jersey, and I was raised in Oak Hill, West Virginia since I was 5. I graduated from Oak Hill High School in 1989, which, by the way, my nephew graduated from Oak Hill High School yesterday, part of class 2013. Very proud of my nephew, Anthony Michael Steins, and his best friend, Benny Conley, who also graduated yesterday from Oak Hill High School, class of 2013. And Benny Conley is one of my students who is wrestling today. He's been wrestling for since he's 15. Wow. He's been wrestling almost 4 years. Yes, and he's part of a group called WVCW, West Virginia Championship Wrestling. And today, WVCW brings their 3rd Miracle on the Mountain, which is Miracle on the Mountain 3. It puts in the main event, you got Matt Hardy and you got Hurricane Helms. They're in a tag team match going against Joey By God Morton and Dangerous Dave Scott, called, Old School Elite. You also got Scotty Blaze defending the West Virginia Heavyweight Championship against a nice competitor. I can't remember his name right off the bat, but he'll be defending his championship title there. I will be part of that show today at Battle Royal. So fans should come out to the Bluefield Auditorium and check out Miracle on the Mountain 3. It is for a good cause. The money is raised for the Children's Miracle Network and for the Children's Hospital in Morgantown, West Virginia. So they should really check it out. Tickets are still on sale at the Sam's Club in Bluefield, Virginia. Tickets are still available, at the Bluefield Auditorium. They really should come out and check out and see a really good show.
Absolutely, because it's a very good cause, because a mutual friend of ours is going tonight as well, Anthony Bird. Anthony. I grew up with Anthony. So.
Yeah, Anthony is a good friend. He used to come watch me when I wrestled for one of the most memorable promotions. They didn't last long, but they lasted long enough to make an impact into the West Virginia wrestling history culture, which is APW, Appalachia Pro Wrestling, which was Ward Wilson and his wife, June Wilson, along with Leonard Sims.
Very good people.
Yeah. And they ran on Tuesday nights at the Oak Hill Armory, which is now the Lewis Center, but it was the Oak Hill National Guard Armory. We ran on Tuesday nights, and we always had an average crowd draw between 100 to 200 people every week, and that's without TV. And and the thing is about APW, what I liked about is every match was treated like it was a main event match. So, because we knew we didn't have TV, we didn't have any real big shows to promote to, so it was just weekly shows. But we all knew we wanted to make the show good, and they had very good wrestlers that were part of that card. And I mean, every match was an A+ match. Every match, it was like a main event match. So it was during the Monday Night Wrestling Wars as well, when WCW Monday Nitro would go head-to-head against then the WWF Monday Night Raw. And our show was on a Tuesday night. So after people watch the Wrestling Wars on TV Monday nights, they'll come watch local wrestling in Oak Hill on Tuesday nights. And because we had some names from ECW that came there, like Chris Hambrick would come there. We had Kid Cash that come by. We had Jamie Noble, which Jamie Noble was in WCW, was also in WWE. Yeah, and he who's also from Baileysville, West Virginia himself, trained by Joey Morton. He would come in a couple times, and down there, and he's now a producer or an agent, whichever you want to call it, for WWE. So I mean, I always wondered what happened to him. Yeah, he's still part of the WWE. He's in the office now, and he's got an office job, and which last I checked, he was quite happy how everything went, because he's definitely part of wrestling history. A former cruiserweight, heavyweight champion, and tag team champion, and been in both WCW and the WWE. And to be able to work with the company is always a great thing to have a job with somebody. I would have been there a long time ago myself, but unfortunately, it just didn't come to happen. I had a couple chances when Kevin Kelly was there, and then when Dr. Tom Pritchard was there, and then Tom Laurinaitis was in the office, and I gave his personal cell phone number out to a kid to get on the show, which they did with the kid get on the show, but then they kind of reprimanded me about that, and I kind of lost my chance. But yeah, I'm not going to try to go into talking things like in heat matters. I don't really hold no grudges, and I don't hold any personal thing against John Laurinaitis for the WWE. The only thing I ever wished is that they would just let me showcase my character, because I think, and this is just me, I could do a lot more by doing a lot less in the ring, especially in a bigger size crowd, because I did that for Carlos Colon and the World Wrestling Council in Puerto Rico, as well as I wrestled for Stampede Wrestling. I did it in Stampede Wrestling, and I also did it, in Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling. And so hopefully maybe, I'm going to be 43 in September. I still got a lot more miles left on my boots that I can still go and I can still perform, and my character is one of the safest characters for anybody to be in the ring with. So, but you never know. I don't think that Vince and WWE really wants wrestlers. I mean, they think nowadays they want actors or people who are more chiseled out body, and which I understand that, because it's cosmetics, it's a lot to play, and they're more of a movie company now. And like I said, you don't even use to call them WWE wrestling superstars. They're called WWE superstars or WWE divas. So even though the terminology's changed, so it is more of entertainment, and that's what they are, the WWE, the World Wrestling Entertainment, and that's what the wrestling business is about. It is about entertainment. So, and that's what my character is. It's a character that's entertaining to watch. So hopefully,
what do you think of TNA? I mean, I've heard you mention WWE. What do you think of TNA? TNA wrestling.
They're small. They're growing, and I know they got their hurdles to go through now. But TNA, Jeff Jarrett and his dad, Jerry Jarrett, started TNA themselves, and to give another choice. And they started on primarily in pay-per-view, which was a smart idea. And TNA is growing, and I know that they're using the play the WCW, but again, I'm not trying to be criticizing, but you got too many people that want to be chief and bumping heads, which kind of hinders down talents that should be pushed, and they kind of play on talents that already had their run. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful in any way to nobody. You know, I think they are a very good company to work for. I definitely would work for TNA. You know, I just think that somebody's got to have the power and somebody's got to have the final say. And I'm sure Dixie Carter does have the final say. But you got to have a smart person. And I'm not trying to take up for Vince McMahon, but you got to have a Vince McMahon there. The guy, you know, the buck's got to stop somewhere, and someone's got to know what's going to sell, and what sells is entertainment. And the more you try to sell a wrestling pretense, because wrestling has changed, and it changes every 10 years. You can look at the past 10 years, and you can see how much it's changed now. It changes every 10 years. It has to. That's how it evolves to survive the times. But you can't suppress. And that's why even TNA is even trying to take that word wrestling out. You know, now they're going as Impact, you know. And so, because they're trying to make an impact, which I think they're a good company. They got good players. I got friends that are there, you know, like Cowboy James Storm, you know, Bobby Roode coming from Canada, you know. They're all, you know, they got great roster talent, both female and male-wise, even though nothing against WWE, but the females in TNA are a lot better performers and a lot better at telling stories in the ring. So they work just as hard as the men. And I'm not saying WWE divas don't get me wrong. There are those divas that can definitely work. It's just they're not showcasing their talents like Natalya and Beth Phoenix and Layla, you know, who can actually go out there and perform and, you know, and do stuff. And it seems like if something goes towards the fans' way, sometimes WWE seems to squash it. The hottest thing last year was AJ Lee, and they squashed it. And because she was getting pushed, it seemed like she was getting pushed more. She was getting over with the fans more than CM Punk, or at the time, or more than John Cena. Yeah. They put her into play with all those guys, but then it kind of squashed it, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, but that's just how they operate sometimes.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I'm out of time on my radio show this morning. So, do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah, anybody wants to check out any of the tour dates of Lang Grand Prix Wrestling, go to ReneeDupree.net. They want to see anything about me, my father, go to YouTube.com/CubanMan02. Come out to WVCW, but you can check them out on YouTube.com/WVCWTV, as well as check them out on Facebook.com/WVCWTV. Today's show, American Amount 3, is about raising money for Children's Medical Network and Children's Hospital in Morgantown, West Virginia. It'd be a great cause. And the final thought I have to say to all the fans watching, if there's one thing to know about the Cuban Assassin, is I'm always going to just simply say, shut your sticky mouth.
Hey, and thank you for being on the show, and I hope at some point you return to the show to promote any new things that you got going on, and I'm very grateful.
I'll be more happy to, so thank you for having me part of it.
Thank you. And that was Cuban Assassin, everybody. I will be back tomorrow with another show, and be sure to check out Miracle on the Mountain. And I am going to leave this broadcast with a little bit of music from Six String Revolver.